Well, hey everyone, welcome to episode 200 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is your host, Jackson Mummy. Well, that's quite an accomplishment, I think, to get to episode 200. And today, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that have happened in those 200 episodes. And then we're going to do what we always do on the Extra Mile. We're going to give you something that I think can inspire and motivate and move you forward. We're going to have a conversation with a successful bar taker, Candace Combs, and I think you're going to really love this conversation. I picked it for today because Candace is the embodiment of so many of the things that we really love to see at Celebration Bar Review. Someone who just kept at it and didn't give up. We call her our tenacious student, and her story of success, I think, will be inspiring to just everybody. Well, if this is your first time with us, let me just say you're coming in at along the way of a very now long-running podcast series. When we began these podcasts, it was July 1st of 2015. So long ago to you, but I have to say, when you've done 200 episodes, you really begin to go, wow, is there anything left to say? Is there anything else that we could talk about or do? And then I went back and looked at what we've been doing over the years, and I'm pretty amazed at what we've done and pretty excited about what's to come. But as I say, if this is your first time with us, we want to welcome you. We know that because of the nature of the bar exam, we have people that drop in and they join us for a few months, and then hopefully they pass the bar and they move on. But we hope that you'll tell your friends about us, that you'll share these episodes, and that while you're with us, that you'll find them helpful. You can watch all of our episodes by going to celebrationbarreview.com/ and then put in the episode number. So today it would be celebrationbarreview.com /200. You can also check out all of the episodes going back to episode number 1 by going to our website and clicking on the podcast link at the top of the page. And if you'd like to listen to the podcast, you can do that by going to Apple iTunes or Spotify or iHeartRadio or really almost any place you get your podcast information. And so we come to you every Wednesday morning, or every Wednesday at least, with information about all things bar exam related. And it's been really an interesting journey for me to do this. When I started in 2015, I really didn't know very much about podcasting. I'm not sure that I do know all that much more about podcasting itself today, but I certainly know that it's been an incredible journey and something that I wouldn't give up for anything in the world. We've literally had thousands and thousands of people listen and download and watch these episodes. We've had them shared around the world. I am constantly hearing from people who contact me and say, I've been listening or watching your podcast, in some cases for months or years. And I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful that so many people find what we have to say here of value to them. And so I want to just thank all of you as listeners and watchers. If you've been with us for a while, well, thank you very much for doing that. If you're relatively new to us, well, we appreciate that. And if this is your very first time, hey, you picked a good episode to jump in on. So I wanted to share first just some things that have happened in those years since we started this podcast. And the reason that I started the podcast initially was that I wanted a way to communicate directly with our audience. I knew that people were consuming information about the bar exam in lots of different ways, but I thought that one of the least effective ways was the traditional 3L sitting at a table in a law school spouting nonsense that they'd been told by their big box bar review so that they could get their friends to sign up and the rep could get their free course. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for the reps getting their free course, but the reality is that co-student of yours sitting there knows nothing about the bar exam at all. And it was making me crazy that people had so much misinformation about the exam. They had no idea what was happening, and we were in a time of great change in the bar exam itself, and I was really deeply concerned that people just weren't getting that. Now, I'd been blogging and I'd been doing videos on YouTube, and the YouTube videos have been remarkably successful. I think even with the videos we've taken out, we're now something like 400,000 views of our videos, which for a bar review is pretty amazing. Now, if I were a 12-year-old emo singer, it probably would be an afternoon's worth of work. But for the bar exam, that's quite a bit of activity. And so I knew that people like to consume this information in video and in audio form, and I wanted to find a way to directly communicate with our audience. So I wildly set out to do some podcasts, and I had no idea what was involved in trying to create weekly content. And I have to say, it was a challenge. There were some weeks when I literally sat here and looked at the camera and thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And then there were other times where it just spilled out, where there was just so much going on, I could barely wait to get to the next episode to share some new idea or some new interview or some new piece of information with our audience. And so I appreciate that, and I also have appreciated the feedback that I've gotten from you. And it's come in a lot of different ways. It's come in phone calls and emails. It's come by conversations on our website. It's come in live conversations with our enrolled students. And it really has been remarkable to me how deeply we have touched so many of you, how many of the stories that we've shared with you have been inspiring and encouraging, how much the tips and the approaches that we've suggested have turned things around and helped people go from having little or no success on the bar to being very successful on the exam. That's a wonderful legacy to have left, and I'm glad that we could do it up to this point, and I hope we'll continue to do it for a good long time to come. Now, in preparation for today's episode, I went back and looked at the list of all of our episodes, and wow, it's like walking through a time machine, really. One of the interesting things was that we've had the opportunity to interview some experts in their fields, particularly in personal development. I have talked to Bill Harris, who just recently passed away. He was the president of Centerpoint Research Institute, and he was the founder of the Holosync audio meditation system. I've had interviews with Millicent St. Clair, my co-teacher for photo reading, one of the leading teachers of photo reading in the world, a TEDx speaker, an amazing human being. I talked to Elena Ducharme, someone who is an expert in personal development and the work that is required to be successful there. Those are just a few of the experts I've talked with. I've also had the privilege of now going through 7 bar exam cycles in the podcast. Now, of course, I've been teaching the bar for more than 25 years. I think we're going up on 27 now. But since we started the podcast, we've been through 7 exam cycles. So we've actually seen the test, and we've shared the tests with you as results came in, as people were preparing for the next test, as those results came in, the waiting periods, the results, and so on. And over those exam cycles, we've seen a lot of things change. Sadly, results have continued to decrease across the country in almost every exam in almost every jurisdiction. We've been very fortunate that our students have exceeded those rates consistently, and I think part of the reason is because we've been telling the truth about the test and about how to prepare for it. You know, I've done a number of different series in this podcast program. Some of the series that I did were on myths about the bar exam, MYTHS. I've done some series on tips about how to raise your score on the bar exam, extremely well received. I did a whole series on bar exam peace, kind of 2 words that didn't go together. How do you put the exam and peace together so that you get your best result? We talked about shifts in the bar exam, and we've done that periodically over the years as there have been major shifts in the test from time to time and in the way that people needed to respond to it. We've talked about study strategies, and I've done a lot of episodes based on specific strategies for specific points in the study process. And those have been some of the most popular and widely circulated episodes. We've looked at skills like intuition and answering multi-state questions. We've looked at how to do essay writing and how to take performance tests. We've put a lot of information out about how to prepare for the bar exam. And then we've done what we call countdown videos. We've literally said, you're this many days until your next exam. Here's what you ought to be focusing on. Here's what you ought to be doing. And those have been among the very most popular work that we've done in these last 3 years. I've talked a lot about the tools that we use at Celebration Bar Review, our approach to writing, the FLA approach versus IRAC writing. I've talked about why the emperor has no clothes when it comes to the big box bar reviews, why they can continue to offer approaches that aren't successful and people continue to buy them. We've talked about tools like photo reading, something that we believe very strongly in, and I've watched it grow from being more of a niche kind of product to mainstream in our course. In fact, I now have people in other courses contacting me asking if they can add photo reading to their big box bar review. It's literally becoming mainstream. We've talked about paraliminal recordings to help deal with blockages and challenges and problems that bar takers might be facing around their emotions, their anxiety, their ability to focus and keep their concentration, their ability to retain information, and those have been extremely popular. We've certainly talked about meditation and quiet time. We've talked about the Holosync audio meditation program and the way that we use it in our course. Those have been popular as well. And we've talked about skills like mind mapping and the approach that it takes to visual note-taking. We've looked at note-taking from lots of different aspects, and we've spent a lot of time recently on mind mapping as one of those strategies that I think can make a huge difference. Along the way, we've seen a lot of changes in the bar exam. We've seen the uniform bar exam go from a relatively small part of the market to many, many states. We saw New York switch to the UBE. We've seen state after state go to the UBE, and now we're well over 30 jurisdictions with more being added every year. And that's been a major change in the development of the bar exam. It's changed the philosophy, it's changed some of the strategy in terms of where bar takers should go. We've seen how that test has impacted what's happened, particularly for foreign trained attorneys. And so this has been a major development. We've looked at developments in other big states like Florida, California, Texas, and Georgia to keep track of the changes in those jurisdictions and the approaches that they've taken while remaining outside the orbit of the UBE. Spent a lot of time talking about foreign bar takers and what the challenges are for them coming into the U.S., taking the bar exam, the locations where they can take it, the best places to take the exam, the things that they should be looking for. I've talked a lot about the changes in the multi-state bar exam itself. The addition of a seventh subject happened during this podcast series with civil procedure being added. We've also seen a change in the number of questions that counted towards your score, going from 200 questions to 190, now to 175. We've looked at specific changes in particular states and the changes that they made to their tests as they went along, and certainly spent a lot of time looking at the cut scores or the qualifying passing scores, particularly in states like California that has had a real challenge and a real controversy about whether or not that score should be lowered from its current spot. I've talked a lot about what I think is happening with the bar examiners, with quotas, with pass rates, and things that I think the bar examiners are doing right and things that I think they're doing wrong. I've also been pretty scathing in my criticism of big law schools and law schools that are taking advantage of students. I certainly am not a fan of the big box bar reviews and the big box law schools. I think they do an incredible disservice in this country to bar takers, to the vast majority of bar takers that are not the elite. And we have, over the years, begun to realize that there is an underserved population. This population of non-elite law school students absolutely deserve every opportunity to pass the bar and practice law. And we've made it our mission at Celebration Bar Review to actually speak to those people directly. And we've done that a lot in our podcasts. We've literally tried to find ways in which we can speak to people of color, to women, to minorities, to foreign trained attorneys, to people who have taken and failed the bar multiple times, because we know that those are individuals who are more likely to be discouraged, more likely to give up, more likely to feel like they don't fit into the traditional bar review and traditional bar exam model. And yet we've had enormous success with all of those groups. And so as we've developed this market of underserved and under-resourced bar takers, we've really seen an enormous growth in our own business. And I am very appreciative of that and excited about what we've done to start to change some of the mix of the bars in the states that we service. Now, it hasn't all been grim. We've had some fun, too. I like to use lots of analogies, and I'm a big fan of movies. Some of my favorites have been discussions of Dumbo and Wonder Woman and Wall-E. But sometimes I'm a bit more intellectual, we'll say. I've talked about Plato's Man in the Cave and Ulysses' hero's journey. I've talked about the Disney Haunted Mansion and the demons that follow us. Virtually anything Disney is fair game for me. We've talked about some famous stories from the Bible. One of my favorites is a message that we did about Gideon and faith. We've talked about some sports figures. One of my heroes, John Elway, a team that I follow, though I'm not sure always why, the New Orleans Saints in football. I've also talked about people like Elon Musk and Falcon Heavy. And then occasionally we get into some children's books. My favorite is Hasty Bear, and we've talked about that. Along the way, we've also had to deal with all of the things that happen in the world around us. The hurricanes, the fires, the natural disasters, the earthquakes, the volcanoes. We've talked about the unfortunate events like the Pulse shooting that happened here in Orlando right before the bar exam a couple of years ago. We've dealt with the challenges that our students in Puerto Rico faced and continue to face after Hurricane Irma. We've looked at the situation in Texas with the flooding and the hurricanes there and studying for that bar exam in the midst of all that chaos. We've tried to keep some perspective about the importance of the rule of law. Since the elections in 2016, it's no surprise that there is more than ever a level of controversy about the norms and the rules of law, the impact of our judicial system, the decisions of the U.S. Supreme Court. And we've talked about all of those things at various times. I've tried hard to be not overtly political, but I have been consistent in saying that the reality is that the rule of law has to mean something, and that one way that that changes, and one of the ways that we support and make sure that that continues to be a bedrock principle, is by having a wide variety of people participate in the local bar of their jurisdiction. And so people need a seat at the table. People who've been to law school need a seat at the table. People who've been to something other than the top 10 law schools need a seat at the table. And people who have worked through and made the effort to go through law school or to practice law in another jurisdiction and then move somewhere else deserve the right to be heard and to participate. And so we've talked about the importance of staying focused and working even in the midst of the immigration questions and the political questions of the day to continue to focus on studying for your bar exam and then making a difference as a member of the bar. You know, we've also looked at the changes in pass rates. When we started doing this podcast, the pass rates were dramatically higher than they are today across the country in virtually every jurisdiction. We're seeing in the recent February 2018 some historic all-time low pass rates in states like Florida and California. It is truly a stunning development. It is, as I have said elsewhere, I think a quota system. I think it is an unfair system in many respects, but it is the system that we are left with, and we've tried to analyze that and think about what you have to do to be successful. One of the things that I'm quite confident of is that doing what everyone else is doing is not going to get you very far. You know, I've made the point repeatedly, I guess, that when 2 or 3 bar review companies prepare 90 or 95% of the bar takers, those companies own the pass rate. And when the pass rates are below 50% or below 40% or below 30%, those big companies own those pass rates. And those companies continue to teach the bar the way that they were teaching it when I came into this industry more than 25 years ago. We've tried to be clear that there are new ways to study, new ways to learn, new ways to approach the exam. So we use tools like photo reading and paraliminals. We use an intuitive method of answering questions. We use a proprietary writing method in our essay writing designed to help students focus on disputes and conflicts. Why? Because we think it sets our students apart. It gives them an edge. It gives them a chance to level the playing field against the elite first-time bar takers who, quite frankly, aren't doing all that well themselves, but they're the ones that are most likely to pass. And we've seen great success with that. In every jurisdiction that we prepare students for, including the UBE, we have exceeded the rates of those states over a period of years. We continue to see success stories in abundance. And I've saved this last number and statistic for the very end. Since we started 200 episodes ago, we have done 60 separate interviews with successful bar takers. So literally just a little under a third of our episodes have been interviews with individual bar takers. Virtually all of those individuals were repeat bar takers, although not all. They represent all walks of life, all ages, all races, all kinds of backgrounds. Some of them went to pretty good law schools. Some of them went to average schools. Some went to not so great schools at all. Some of them had taken the bar exam a couple of times before they passed. Some had taken it many, many times, like our interview today with Candace. But in every case, what really stands out about the interview is the determination and the dedication of these individuals, the willingness to do what it took to be successful. They've shared some incredible stories, some struggles that really brought tears to my eyes. We had students who lost family members, close family members, right before exams. We had students who had trauma and disaster in their lives, whether it was personal or natural disasters. We had students who were told repeatedly that they couldn't be successful, who heard from spouses that they were no good, or from family members or parents or schools that they were worthless and unable to do it. And in every case, they proved them wrong. You know, the real measure of these interviews has not been what we did at Celebration Bar Review, it's what these students did. And these 60 students that I've interviewed represent just the tip of the iceberg. These were the people who I am most grateful to because they have shared transparently their own journey. And I think about the individuals who had massive jumps in their scores by 10 points, 20 points, 30 points, 70 points, and more to pass the exam. These are people who've been willing to share those stories, been willing to acknowledge that they did not succeed in many cases at the beginning, but that they found a way to be successful. And in those stories and in the sharing of those stories, what we really wanted to do was to give you hope, to give you encouragement, to give you a sense that it is possible, that you can do it. You know, there are many, many stories that I get to hear where I sit. There are many people who pass the bar and then say, you know, I don't really want anyone to know what happened with me. It's kind of embarrassing. It's kind of difficult in a social media world to put that out there. And I respect that. But I am so very grateful to these 60 who've done interviews and the many more interviews we've got ahead for people who are willing to share, to give of themselves, to tell their story, in the hopes that it would let other people understand what could be done, what needed to be done, what was possible. I'm very, very grateful to every one of the people that I've interviewed in this podcast. I'm excited about some interviews we've got coming up. I've saved a few in the next few episodes that are mind-blowingly wonderful. But I picked today's interview because in many ways it strikes me as one of the most typical. Candace Combs took the bar exam 6-7 times. No success. She took it in 2 different states. She did everything that she could do. She went through all kinds of difficulties. She lost her husband right when she started law school and had to sit out for a couple of years, as you're going to hear. Now, Candace is a grandmother. She didn't do this at an early age or a young age. She fought through everyone telling her that it could not be done, that she couldn't pass the bar. She simply put her head down and kept working. She tried the techniques and the approaches that we offered. She really gave herself to this process. And the most beautiful picture of all was seeing her being sworn in Kentucky in February of 2018. It's a great story, and you're going to hear her talk about it and tell her own story in her own words. I think Candace stands in as the representative today for all of the people that we help at Celebration Bar Review. We know that you make a difference. We know that it's frustrating and frightening and discouraging, that it makes you angry and disappointed if you're not successful. We know that it seems like it would be easier to just give up and go do something else. But I want to salute those of you that have hung in there, that have tried, that keep fighting, that keep persevering, that are tenacious, that will not give up. And that's why we called this podcast The Extra Mile. It's really about the people that are willing to go the extra mile. You know, the saying is attributed to Roger Staubach, but I don't really think it's his originally. He said there are no traffic jams along the extra mile. And I think that's true. But you know what I have found along the extra mile are some extraordinary people. I want to thank the folks on our staff that help us put together our course and our podcasts. My operations manager, June Foray, is absolutely invaluable to me. Couldn't do this work without her. My senior editor, Megan Saya, is absolutely a miracle on so many levels, and she's brilliant, and she handles the editorial content that we put together. One of our mentors and coaches, the individual that works on our Facebook group and does our group coaching calls, is Kelly Perkins. And like everyone in our course who's in the law side, she's a former student. We also have an extraordinary group of editors, all of whom are former students, and they work in different jurisdictions preparing the materials that are used in the course. And I want to thank each and every one of them. I also want to thank our IT folks, in particular Matt Chapman, who's been with me doing this work for over 20 years now. He is absolutely extraordinary. And of course, I can't do any of this without the co-founder of Celebration Bar Review, the partner in the business, the person that really is behind the scenes and the brain of the company, my wife, Sarah. She is an extraordinary individual who has seen the vision long before I did, who understood the importance of home study because, frankly, she wanted me to be home when I was studying for the bar. She recognized the need, and she saw the need earlier for those underserved populations long before I really recognized that it was out there. She is absolutely brilliant and faithful and an extraordinary asset to our students and those who come alongside us. There are many other people that help us put together this course and the work that we do, and we're very, very grateful for that. We're grateful for our partners at Learning Strategies and at Centerpoint Research Institute, among others. We're excited that we have those partnerships. I'm pleased that we can continue to bring this podcast, our course, our live boot camp efforts to our students on an ongoing basis. All of this simply is not possible without students that support the work that we do, that find encouragement and are enthusiastic about the work. So thank you to all of you, the people in our audience. You may not have always agreed with everything I've said. You probably won't agree with everything I have to say in the future, but I hope that you find it stimulating and useful and thought-provoking. And if we're doing that, if we're helping you with that, and if we're giving you the enthusiasm, the excitement, the encouragement, the affirmation that you need to know that you can pass the bar, then we've really done our job. So I've gone too long, but I wanted to be clear about what it's meant to us over these first 200 episodes. I look forward to the next 100 or 200 or how many of our episodes we are blessed to be able to do. And I'm really excited to be able to share this interview now with you with a really dear friend and wonderful student, Candace Combs. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to Hanging Out with Successful Bar Exam Students. And today we have Candy Combs with us. I love that name. I love this person. Candy, congratulations. Welcome. We are so glad to have you here.
Oh, thank you. It feels very good to be here.
Yes, you've had quite a journey to get to passing. You passed the Kentucky bar in February 2018. And and very exciting. And this was not your first try at the bar exam. I mean, you've been at this for a while now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Either
go
I
ahead.
say that I'm either tenacious or silly, and I'm going to go with tenacious.
Me too. You've got, just before we started, you pointed out the sign behind you. And yeah, when people ask what do you do, whatever it takes. So that's our theme for today. So let's start with you just sort of introducing yourself to the audience and telling us a little bit about how it was that you came to be in law school and sort of your journey to the bar exam.
It is a great story, and I'm always happy to tell it. I tell people it's never too late, and you're never too old. And when you start to believe that, then you should be dead, because then it would be too late. But other than that, it's not. Um, when I was young, right after finishing my undergrad, I knew that in my heart, law school was something I was called to do, but the wedding came, the babies came, my husband was in the military, we lived all over the world, and those were wonderful years. But I woke up 50 years old, he was dead, the kids were grown, and I was working at the mall selling bras for $10 an hour.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, this is bad. This is really, really bad. And it was like a voice said, remember that I put in your heart you were going to law school? You're going now. So after many years taking the LSAT several times, of course, there are universities that did not want to take a non-traditional student, especially with not stellar LSAT scores. They were fine, but not really competitive against a lot of younger, not more traditional students. So even getting into law school was difficult. My first try was in 2009, and during that year, that was the year that my husband died. And so obviously I didn't make it as a one out. And my law school required that you sit out for 2 years before you retread back in. And they were shocked when I showed up in the fall of 2012 and said, I'm here, let's do this. So those 3 years were really, law school's horrible, and anyone who's been to law school knows that. But we got through it. We got
Okay.
through it. It was,
Yeah.
overall, it was a positive experience. Um, Loved my classmates. They didn't treat me any differently, even though I was older than most of their mothers, and my professors were all younger than me. But it was good. But then came to the summer of 2015. Once now I had graduated, and I was under that delusion that taking the bar exam was just another exam, and it was a post exam, so you'd pass it. So I sat there for the summer, clicking the buttons on what you like to refer to as the big box
Yeah.
program. And I clicked my buttons every day. Yep, watched that. Yep, read that. Yep, answered those questions. But if I had to be honest, I really didn't understand. I didn't understand the exam, and I definitely did not understand the material. Uh, so I took the exam that summer, and lo and behold, I didn't pass. And that was kind of shocking because the big box had told me I would.
Yeah.
So I went back at it again in February, and same thing. Um, totally same thing. It was asked questions on the bar exam I'd never seen material on. So made the decision in July to just sit out. I'd been going at it. I wasn't successful, so I just went into a job. I was working in a law firm, so that was at least keeping me in law. But then when I knew I was going to ramp up for February, that's right, February 2017, is when I found Celebration.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I found about you immediately is that you are ridiculously honest.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
unlike most people, you told me the truth.
Yeah.
I started with, look, I was only 3 points away from passing. The first time I was 3 points away. The second time I was 6 points away out of 400.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
in
It's close.
my mind, that's close.
Yeah.
But you were like, nope, you're more like 30 points behind. This will never work. Stop. And I was like, dang, what kind of math are you using? But so just on blind faith, signed up. The one thing I did that you later told me I shouldn't have done, and you were right about that too, unfortunately, to say, was I went back to my law school, and for 6 weeks I locked myself in a room.
Yeah.
The problem with that was that I wasn't working during that time. And if I can repeat what you used, that was the same thing as setting off a nuclear bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Because now they're looking to pick up my car. My rent was paid, but nothing else. So now I've got character and fitness issues.
Yeah, and I remember that it was just sort of watching you crumble from the inside and feeling really kind of helpless to say, oh, for all you're doing all the wrong things for good reasons, and it's just going to tumble down on you, and of course it did. But I also think, Candy, that's a spot where a lot of people would have thrown up their hands and said, no mas, I'm done. This thing has beaten me. I didn't know you well enough at that point to know that you were tenacious.
Yeah, I would not quit.
Yeah, and I came to understand that later, and it is one of the things that I admire the most about you. It's why you're going to be a fabulous attorney. You're the attorney I want, the one that just doesn't give up. But that was probably the low point for you. Is that fair to say?
That was very bad. And worse than that was the day we got our scores back.
Yeah.
I was not successful then.
Yeah.
So that was bad. So although I knew I would never give up, then I consulted back with you. You looked at my scores and said, and this is truth, and this is why I'm doing this interview for you today. You told me I was 30 points low, not 3. And in that time, I made those 30 points. So now I had an MBE score that was so high, and you started looking at states that would take a score, would take that score and just allow me to do the essay portion. You identified Kentucky, which is where I'm from. It's where my children are. It's where my sisters are. It's where my grandchildren are. It only made sense to go that route.
Yeah. So let me just clarify for everybody what's going on here. Candy's trying to take the Tennessee bar, and the numbers and the way that they're reported out, scaled versus raw, are misleading, and you feel like you're much closer than you really are. So when we unpacked all of that and we realized where you were in that process, then the second step became, do you want to keep knocking your head against this wall in Tennessee, or are your scores good enough that with some repurposing we could find a better jurisdiction for you? And some people who are more cynical would call that forum shopping, but really my point is I want you to be a member of the bar. Once you're barred, the world, as you will discover, opens up to you. So we did some, I think, strategic planning is a good way to put it. And it happened to coalesce nicely with your personal life. It was sort of like, oh, well, Kentucky really works well for me, as you just explained. And I'm like, well, okay, do Kentucky. I mean, right?
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So you shifted your attention to Kentucky, right?
Correct.
Okay. And what was different about the Kentucky exam?
Well, and interestingly, I'd like to say this too, if you think outside the box. I live in Nashville. I'm talking to you from Nashville. But the Kentucky state line is 21 miles from here. People who commute far shorter distances, I can practice law and still enjoy. I love Nashville. Nashville's fun. So anyway, what was the question? I missed it.
So what was different about the Kentucky bar? And I don't mean bars in Kentucky, but the Kentucky bar.
No. Kentucky has a different format. They do the morning is Kentucky specific questions, essay portion, and the afternoon is specific to the UBE.
Right.
So here's what happens. In the morning, those are mostly softballs. So you walk out of there feeling pretty good, like, got this, not a problem. And then the afternoon hits you like a train.
Yeah. And the UBE is challenging. I mean, we move a lot of people into the UBE, the Uniform Bar Exam, but don't misunderstand. It's a perfectly difficult test.
Oh, yeah.
And the bar exam is more difficult. I mean, if you could have taken the bar in 2009 or even 2012, it was an easier test in many ways than it is today. So you're actually passing against a harder standard. So you went in and did the Kentucky bar the first time, but you weren't successful there, right? So now, what's your thought process? You've tried it once. You've got the tries in Tennessee behind you. You've got a try in Kentucky. Tell us about your thoughts and your sort of focus at that point.
So here's what I did. First of all, I'd like to say what's different about Celebration than, and this is from my view, what's different about Celebration from the big box programs is your explanations, your the lectures, what the heck you were saying, because when you started using analogies of princesses and superheroes and everything, for some reason that was speaking English to me. And that's what I needed, it broken down so that I could have a better understanding of the material. So you did that in your lectures, but most important were your MBE questions. Your explanations. When I did your practice questions, and I went very carefully through the explanations of the ones I got wrong, I never got those questions wrong again, even when they were reformatted, because your explanation was far clearer. And that was what made the difference. So the mistake I made the first time I took the Kentucky exam was, I was like, oh, well, I have an MBE score that I need. Obviously, I understand all of the MBE, so I don't need to go back and restudy that. Then when I missed it, and I missed it again by
Small,
but
right? It was close.
handful of points.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so now we're in January 2018. I'm working a full-time real estate job that is hugely demanding. Real estate in Nashville is super hot right now. I don't have time to lock myself in a room. I certainly can't put myself back in the financial situation I was in a year ago. So, how can I study for the bar and do my 18-hour a day job? And the answer was go back to my celebration materials and go back through them because they're concise, they're easy to understand, and break it down that way. So, and nobody hear me, but in 4 or 5 hours a day to study, which wasn't enough, um, the materials allowed me to go in and knock the exam out of the park.
Yeah. And so you passed in February of 2018. Woo! What was that moment like?
Okay, so when you haven't passed, you start this head talk of that's okay, that's okay. People don't judge me based on that. It has nothing to do with how God looks at me, how my family looks at me. It's okay. I'm no less a person. You do all this head talk convincing yourself that it's okay. And it is, but it wasn't okay with me deep inside. And it was something I had to accomplish. I had to finish that circle. So the minute, and I didn't expect to pass because I was used to not passing. The way Kentucky does their scores, your score is either in red or it's in green. So when I pulled my screen up, it was all I saw was the green. I didn't see the word
Yeah.
pass.
Yeah.
All I saw was
Yeah.
green.
It's strange. It's the only state that does it that way that I know of.
I'm screaming hysterically. My whole office comes running over. They're looking at my screen. They're like, what is this? What, you know, and I'm like, read it. Nobody understands. But at that moment, I said all that to say, at that moment, it did matter that I passed. And it did mean so much. I couldn't speak for hours. It was unbelievable.
Wow. That is awesome. And your family, I know, is extremely proud of you.
They really couldn't. Oh, okay, so this is the gospel truth. The day I was sworn in, which was a week ago or 10 days ago now, my son looked at me and he said, Mom, a lot of bets were lost today. Like,
not our
thank
not our bet. Our bet paid off in spades. Um, the picture of you, which I think we're going to use for this interview, is you being sworn in your skirt and suit, and it got a lot of reaction on our Facebook page, didn't it? A lot of
yeah.
people were like, "Whoa, this is awesome!" There's this grandma, right? Getting sworn in, never giving up, never quitting. You were very much involved in our private Facebook community and the group coaching calls, right, with
Yes,
Kelly?
that's huge.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know those were your biggest cheerleaders, really, in many respects, outside of your family, probably.
No, they were bigger.
Okay. So, what was the benefit of the group coaching for you?
When you're studying for the bar, you're isolated. Even if you're around other people who are studying for the bar, the rest of the world doesn't get you. And you are in a mindset that nobody understands. And so those meltdowns, those frustrations, the group allows you to feel normal and encouraged. So I literally lived for those hangouts, if you would, back in those days, because that was the only place I felt normal, comfortable, and that I was okay.
Yeah, and we hear that from so many of our students that participate, and I know that one of the benefits also is that past successful students come and stay and help out, and I'm hoping that you continue to do that. I'm pretty sure you're on the invitee list for an upcoming group coaching call to come back and
Good,
share
I
your
would
wisdom.
love to, because you need somebody who can say, "Yep, been there, done that."
Yeah. I'm sure that there are people who are going to watch this interview, Candy, who will say to themselves, well, I'm a little bit older, I'm non-traditional, maybe I didn't do things in the normal, whatever normal means, way, and I've had some not successes, right? I've had some setbacks. Your story is pretty remarkable in that you just did whatever it took to get through. But what advice would you offer that person that's sort of going, I don't know, it's hard, it's frustrating, it's all those things that you felt. What would you say to them at this point?
It is hard and it's frustrating, but it's discouraging. And you've worked so hard. You have a degree that most people can't even begin to start, much less finish. But it is the full circle thing, and it's so worth it. Never, never, never give up. Just keep doing it.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think, you know, it felt like it was all worth it, didn't it, when you had your hand up
Oh,
taking the oath?
totally.
Yeah. And I think that it opens up the doors to so many things. I mean, in this world, I mean, you're only a few miles from the border, but even if you were a long way away, the truth is once you're barred somewhere, you're able
Yeah.
to do so many things, all right? I mean, you're already probably discovering that. It's pretty remarkable. In spite of the fact that each state has its own bar exam and its own bar membership, there's a fair amount that can happen across state lines. So I think it does that. And of course, it changes the mental set, right? It's just,
Oh, oh, okay. This past Sunday, one of my law school buddies, these were all traditional students, was married, and a whole lot of those guys were there. I walked in and they were shocked at how much, this is going to sound silly, but how much younger I looked, how much they were like, you stand taller, you speak clearer, you're different. And yeah, I think that's probably true.
wow. Well, this is just awesome. We are so proud of you and so pleased for you. The reason we do what we do is to have moments like these and to see stories like yours come to full circle. I mean, a 9-year odyssey for you. And it's just so wonderful that you've accomplished this. And I don't think this is the end of your accomplishments by any means. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what you do as a tenacious lawyer. I think it's going to be pretty wonderful. But I know that it's just that sense of having climbed over the hill and saying, yep,
Yeah.
I'm here. I did it.
Interestingly, I would like to piggyback on one of the statements you made was, yeah, I really didn't fully understand how much it opened up. But my inbox is now full of opportunities all over the country
Yeah.
just because I am barred in a U.S. jurisdiction. I have to say, I didn't understand that. And it's huge.
I'm glad you're saying that because I say it to people all the time and they go, I don't get that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what happens. The world is different. Back when I was doing all this and when dinosaurs roamed the earth, it was a very different world. Today, we are much more universal, and the
Yes.
UBE is making that even more so. But, I think that one of the great things about your story was that in not giving up, you also didn't just say, well, I'm going to keep repeating the same errors. I'm going to try and find a solution through these challenges. I'm going to find a way to get to the end result. And I think if there's a takeaway for a lot of people, it should be not only don't give up, but be creative. Think out of the box. Ask yourself, what else can I do that will get me to my ultimate end goal? And I think if they do that, then they have a chance to be sort of feeling the feelings that you've got right now, which are so amazing and wonderful.
Can
So,
can I
yes,
add one more thing
sure.
that yes, think outside the box, get creative. There are a lot of ways to skin a cat, if I can use
Yeah.
that Kentucky slang, but find someone who will tell you the truth. That was a game changer, and that was why celebration was far beyond its value. The truth will always set you free, and in this situation, it was the key.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. I'm not known for my subtlety, so thank you for
Oh,
for being so kind about that. It's really been a pleasure to work with you, and as I say, I hope that we'll have the opportunity to have you continue to mentor and support our students in the course. I know that your truth and your wisdom will make a great difference to them. And thanks for being with us. Stay in touch. We'll look forward to seeing what happens. And for all of you who've been watching or listening today, thank you. I hope that this was as encouraging and inspiring to you as it was for us. And we'll see you again very soon in our next interview. Bye bye, everybody. Well, that's our interview with Candace today. I hope you enjoyed it. She is really remarkable, isn't she? It's a great story, and it's a great accomplishment for her. And again, I think Candace is representative of so many of the people that we're fortunate enough to work with here at Celebration Bar Review, giving the opportunity to be successful on their bar exams, and then looking forward to the great things they're going to do as members of the bar. Now, I didn't mention in the beginning, but I do want to say to you that we do have a special free webinar coming up on Monday night and Thursday night. It's called How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. It's a look at the powerful, proven way to pass. We'll be looking at case studies like Candace and many others, and I invite you to join us for that. It's totally free, but you do need to register. And you can do that by going to our website at celebrationbarreview.com/webinar, and you can sign up for Monday or Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Now, if that time or those dates don't work for you, you'll also see a button for a daily on-demand version. Everything is the same, except I'm not live to answer questions, but you're welcome to check that out, and I want to make sure that you get the opportunity to get this information. It's important, and it can be life-changing for you. So make sure you check that out on our celebrationbarreview.com/webinar, or if you're here on the video, just scroll down the page and you can enroll from there. Well, I want to say thanks again to everybody for being with us. Thank you for this special 200th episode. I look forward to seeing you next week as we continue along the extra mile. We've got lots more great content to share with you, lots more information. And thanks again, everybody, for supporting us and being with us through these 200 episodes. So bye-bye for now.